This is an introduction to modelling the Port of London Authority railways in 4mm scale, and it's produced today, September the 14th, 2024. The London docks originally spread out across a lot of what is today central London, and nowadays London docks is concentrated in Tilbury, quite a long way up, down the river. It's hard to imagine how big the industry was for the London docks, and for hundreds of years large amounts of freight were taken from ships pulled right up into London and manually unloaded quite often in the London docks. There were of course hundreds of cranes and jetties used too. Not much room for railways, so much of the work was always manual in the London area. These railways came together, the railways, independent railways in each of the docks came together under the management of the Port of London Authority in 1909. These are maps just to give an extent of what we're talking about, and you can see the ochre coloured areas here, and the modern area of Tilbury docks and a couple of other areas further down the river towards where I used to live in Southend-on-Sea, Westcliff in fact, and you can also see going up the river right the way through to the bottom maps here in the middle of London, where the area that we call today the London Docklands used to literally be docks. So why did I decide to model the Port of London Authority? I have family connections with the London docks. My uncles and grandfather were stevedores in the London docks, in the Royal Docks, I believe. It's a large independent railway operating a large number of their own private locomotives and rolling stock within the Great Eastern Railway and London Tilbury and Southend Railway areas. So it's kind of an independent area of operation inside these larger mainline railway systems. And as a matter of course, then the goods had to be transferred between these mainline railways and the exchange sidings, not just the Great Eastern, by the way, in London, Tilbury, Southend, but other railways too. They had to be exchanged, the goods, because the rolling stock and locomotives that the Port of London Authority had were not accepted on the main line in general. However, having said that, the Port of London Authority did have a habit of reusing mainline company rolling stock, some of which was actually pretty exhausted by the time they got it. And today there has been an appearance of an increasing number of PLA livery ready to run models, which I'll go into in some detail in the presentation. And of course there is the prospect of building what has become quite a fashionable exhibit, a micro layout for exhibitions, and I quite like the idea of building one. I have not built one yet, but I'd like to do that one day. There is not very much in the way of research material available. There's a little bit online, but there are two books by Dave Marden, who was the most thorough research material available that I can find. And there is also an excellent publication by the Industrial Railway Society, Industrial Railways and Locomotives of Essex, which turned out to be very useful. There is an old 1950s book on the Port of London Authority Railways produced by the railway, but I have not come across a copy of it myself. I do quote second-hand references to it in the presentation though. And it was published in 1952, called PLA Railways. So modelling the PLA locomotive fleet, the first locomotive that I got, and in fact I don't know if it is even perhaps the first 4mm scale PLA locomotive ready to run that's been produced, was made by Golden Valley, and I got tempted by a bargain or two. As you can see, I ended up with a fleet of 3 of these. I believe they've got flywheels inside, and they seem to run quite well. The Hornby Packet was something that followed up on that and ended up being one of the best locomotives that Hornby have made. It's interesting in its livery though, because it is different from most photographs I've seen. Most of the photographs I've seen of steam locos either have the white painted numbers and PLA on the tanks, or they have, or actually like the Janus has, etched number plates on the side. But the number 74 seems to have an unusual, perhaps even a unique livery with no PLA identification and just the number on the side. I think that probably was some kind of a cast plate, but a little different from the others. The Daypole Hawthorne Leslie is again one of the best models ever made. Reviewed recently by Sam's Trains. It is quite a remarkable locomotive with its detail. I'm not doing it justice here at all, but I have heard talk that if it's used a great deal on a layout, it does have some motion difficulties, but according to what people are telling me, they're easy to repair if necessary, and they are still a really excellent, probably the best buy for a locomotive right now, believe it or not. I also was aware that austerity 060s were in use on the Port of London Authority, of course, during the war and after the war. Focusing on the period after the war, I got hold of a Hornby austerity and I reliveried it and put new transfers on that to have that add to the fleet. Then I also discovered that EFE austerities were going for very low prices indeed. In fact, they've dropped again since I bought this one. And I got one of these. It's a Longmoor Military Railway livery, because it actually kept that livery when it worked on loan to start with on the Port of London Authority and became part of their fleet, but it kept the LMR livery for quite some time. I did change the numbering on this though, because I wanted it to be a particular locomotive shown in one of the books, and so 108 is a proper authentic numbering for this locomotive. So back to the Golden Valley diesel. So it is quite a nice little model. It does have different ends to it for some strange reason, which I did not change. There were some other things I noticed researching photographs of these in the Port of London Authority that could be attended to quite easily. And they also produced a rake of highly inaccurate 7-plank open coal wagons. Those coal wagons were never used on PLA. They didn't use 7-plank end loading coal wagons. This model, as surprise, as I said, it has a few alterations I made. I changed the livery slightly. I added some new etched nameplates, and I took out some of the cross members of the handrails on each end of the locomotive, and I also took off the little handrails on the ends of the buffer beams and tried to fill them flush, because that's how these locomotives were. These features are appropriate for other of the choices you get from Golden Valley, but not for the Port of London Authority as far as I can tell. So I rebuilt the buffer beam corners once I removed the little handrails in there with a pair of long nose pliers. I did also get some plastruct out and chop it into little pieces to create some small and one large headlight for the ends of the locomotives, because they all seem to have those. A little bit of plasticard and some plastruct tube. It will do. If you're clever, of course, you'll make something that actually lights, but I'm not that clever, so pretty basic, my alterations. The etched number plates are available from the Light Railway Society. and there'll be a link later on. So these are the locomotives I made, and you can see they have slightly varying liveries according to photographic evidence. I only use the 2 liveries. 209 in the middle has a slightly different one for the Royal Docks. But as far as I can tell, those liveries are accurate. But correct me if I'm wrong, because a lot of the information has to be derived from monochrome photographs, of course. So it's quite difficult to figure out the livery in detail. The etch plates come out nicely, and they're well worth the investment. I did fill the etch plates with the colours that I did get from the book's information. Now at the moment I actually do have 2 Hornby W4 packets, and in fact PLA only had one of this particular type of packet, so I'm still undecided what I'm going to do with the second one as I record this. And at the moment too, they are as supplied by Hornby with no additions. They don't come with any etch plates for the number or anything like that, and I don't know of a supplier for those at the moment, but they look very nice indeed. The Dapol Hawthorne Leslie, as I said, it's absolutely superb, and as supplied it has the printed details. I didn't mention the detail on the buffer beam. There's so much to mention about this locomotive. I recommend you go and look at Sam's Trains review. He actually has a PLA version of the release from Dapol and reviewed it in great detail. But this is as it's supplied, with the printed manufacturer's plate on the cab side and the number plate printed on the saddle tank side. But it actually comes with etched plates that you can put over the top of the printed ones, and so I have done that using some impact adhesive. I do not recommend you use super glue or anything like that. I use I think it's called E6000, the one that I use. It's an impact adhesive. So I purchased 2 different J94 Hunslets. Austerity locomotives constructed in World War II. They turned out to be very durable indeed. And the Longmore military model that EFE produced, you can get as quite a bargain now. And I renumbered mine to number 108. So although I kept the London LMR livery, I did change the numbering on it to be the number of a locomotive that was on loan and taken by the PLA in 1952. And this is my attempt at weathering that locomotive. The Hunslet, the Hornby Hunslet, did have some side tank diagonal handrails at the front, which I removed, and I did actually repaint it and renumber it to PLA number 81. This locomotive was with the Royal Docks from 1944 to 1959, and again it's quite heavily weathered, and more information about the lettering later on. In fact, I think to use the PLA wagon lettering that you might still find a couple of sheets of that around. This is an early setup as I was still working on the Austerity. You can still see it has it still has the diagonal handrail at the front, over the front footsteps. You can just see it there. And I'll talk a little bit more about the brake van later on. Behind the coaches are actually Great Eastern Railway, except for the clerestory. That's a North East clerestory, but the others are 6-wheeler Great Eastern Railway coaches, made for me by John and John Avery, and very grateful I am to have them too. The other Austerity, sorry, that is number 81, the same one. So you can see the before and after weathering treatment, and I belatedly removed the handrail. The top handrail stays, the horizontal handrails stay, just the diagonal one doesn't appear on that locomotive or any of those locomotives that I can make out. It's another couple of shots of the different locomotives in the fleet. Now, haven't mentioned anything about passengers so far. I haven't got one of these at the moment, but there is actually a precedent for using a Great Western Rail motor or two, if you did want to show that. Originally the Millwall line used four-wheeler coaches from the Great Eastern Railway. I think they were leased from the Great Eastern Railway. You can get four-wheelers from Everleigh, or you could adapt the Hatton's Genesis or Hornby early period coach types to an approximation. But in 1922 the Great Eastern Railway coaches were replaced by Great Western Railway rail motors. A very interesting change. But the rail motor livery was plain and not lined as in the example above. It was completely unlined and simply had number 1, number 2 and number 3 on them. Sometimes they'd be on the sole bar as well as on the body, but roughly where the number is on the example above, I think, on the body. I've given a link there because there is a shot of one online under the disused stations for North Greenwich. Kernel have been producing a similar model, which is the one illustrated above. More details of all Great Eastern Railway modelling can of course be found in Paul Goldsmith's wonderful document that details and lists just about everything available for modelling the Great Eastern Railway in 4mm scale. I believe there is now also a 2mm version out there if you're modelling Engage. So on we go to talk about wagons, and the book that was published in 1952 doesn't mention the livery of wagons, at least that's what I've been told because I haven't read it myself, but it does give the internal wagon fleet totals as 120 flat wagons, 310 open merchandise wagons, 2 glass wagons, 38 box vans, 77 insulated vans, which I think some at least, if not all, were white body with black lettering, a weed killer wagon, never seen a picture of that, a breakdown van, more of that later, 3 brake vans, at least 3 brake vans, more of that later. And the 1952 book does state that the brake vans were kept for use on the Royal Victoria dock only for the high level line there. PLA seem to have had or borrowed a pulley weighing machine van. Could even be the one in the East Anglian Railway Museum in Chapel, perhaps. I don't know. Perhaps somebody could tell me. But that was used as a tool van, I believe, or breakdown van. So what can you get off the shelf for PLA wagons? Well, interestingly, the Port of London Authority purchased and used old wagons, mostly old wagons from various mainline companies. I know of the Midland Railway, the London South Western Railway and the Caledonian Railway examples. All the locomotives and rolling stock were limited to use within the docks. They did not leave the docks. But of course that doesn't mean they weren't seen with mainline companies' rolling stock and locomotives, because they could come onto the Port of London Authority metals and they would all be seen together there. The Port of London authorities are supposed to have had at least 3 brake vans for use on the high level line, and but I've seen pictures of at least 5 different styles, so perhaps they were replaced over time, I don't know. Mentioned already the Golden Valley wagon pack, but this was unfortunate that they chose this wagon. It's about the only kind of wagon, well, not the only kind of wagon, but it is not a kind of wagon that we found on the Port of London Authority, and so it isn't appropriate. they're actually quite nice wagons, and you'll see later on they actually can come up quite nicely too, as you can see here. So you can see that they take weathering quite well, and they're quite nice crisp mouldings, but they're not the right wagons. In fact, the numbers, I tracked a couple of those down, and the numbers are not appropriate for wagons of this type either, so it isn't. It is definitely not correct. So when I started to try and replace those wagons, I decided I would see what I had in the way of old things that I wasn't going to use, that are not part of my mainstream collection, and I found this old Pico 3 or 4 plank wagon, 3 plank wagon from the Pico Wonderful Wagon series, and it needed to be restored anyway, so I did restore it and then promptly weathered it heavily. I have seen a picture of a similar wagon, possibly not with the same kind of underframe, probably not, but I'm not a real purist when it comes to doing these things. It gives the right impression, I think. And then it does seem as though the PLA had a lot of 4 plank wagons. I came across a bargain and bought some 4 plank XFX GMR, that is ready to run wagons, former LMS type allegedly, and I managed to repaint them and decal them. Didn't really weather them that heavily at the point this was taken. The VIX behind and the Interfrigo van behind, it doesn't look out of place with all the PLA stuff, but I'm not really sure if they would ever be seen together. And then Rapido is producing an ex-Great Western Railway 5 plank diagram 18, and it looks like that is quite an accurate one. But again, I'm not sure about it, but I think it's quite accurate. It's certainly lovely to see it there, and I have one on order. I don't have it yet. So in the meantime, waiting for Rapido UK's initiatives on Port of London Authority wagons, I got hold of some former Midland Railway wooden framed earlier Railway Clearinghouse type 5 plank merchandise wagons without handle floor doors and ideally Morton brakes. I don't think these have Morton brakes, which seem to appear in photographs. So again, the underframe's still not quite right, but brakes on one side's probably more accurate, and there's the wooden frame vans, or wooden chassis vans, not wooden frame vans, wooden chassis on these make them a little bit more accurate. It was around this time I had to find an alternative source for transfers, and that is quite difficult sometimes. There is a set of PLA transfers for wagons, but you go through them quickly and they're quite expensive. So McLong on the Railway Modelling web recently re-identified what was thought to be an ex-London South West Railway van as Caledonian Railway van. And following that, another contributor on the RM web discussion about PLA railways, which I recommend you read, said that Wizard models make a suitable Caledonian Railway van kit. So I bought 2 of them, and I really enjoyed making them. Highly recommended. At which point, the day after I finished them, Rapido UK announced they're releasing the same wagon on Ready to Run, which is due later this year, 2024. It's always the way these days with railway modelling, but you know what? I don't regret making these. They were a lot of fun to make. I think Wizard may have sold out, in fact, now, but I'm not sure. I don't know if more suppliers are coming or not. Rapido then, ahead of the Caledonian Railway wagon, released a Great Western mink in PLA livery, which is accurate, and so I bought 2 of those and changed the number on one of them, and you can see those here below. And there is also, of course, the GW Mink kit from Pico, formerly Parkside kit, which you could use if you find that's more economical for you. But I have to tell you, those Rapido wagons, once you see them, they're just superb. Unfortunately, I think the pallet van kits that Pico and Kaiser, of course, years ago made a cast version of them, are now out of production. But Bachmann have announced ready-to-run pallet vans, but they're not in PLA livery, unfortunately, so far. So I started off with a Parkside kit for a pallet van, and I made that up. Had quite a lot of detail on it, probably a little advanced as a kit in some ways, but I managed to get that done in British Railways livery, and this was done before I took an interest in the Port of London Authority. After I got interested in Port of London Authority, I discovered that they had around half a dozen of these wagons, some of which I think were cast off pretty quickly after they were new from British Railways, but there was about half a dozen, I think, on the PLA network. One of them is in preservation, and the number was determined for one of these PLA models from that. So we ended up with 2 British Railways, 2 PLA PAL vans, and of course, as per usual, recently an announcement has been made by Bachmann that they're going to be releasing a PAL van very shortly, but I don't see anything in their listings at present for the PLA livery. I think they might well find that it would be a popular livery to do, so hopefully they'll do it. But right now it's only British Railways versions that they're producing, and I think a green Scottish whiskey version or something like that. But still, it's nice to see yet another high quality model going to become available for PLA enthusiasts after a little bit of work. So here are my British Railways examples, 2 of them. I got 3 kits that had already been made up, thankfully, although they needed a bit of work and restoration and repair. And in the end, I got the 4 together quite quickly. And I think I'm right in saying the right-hand one is the Kaiser white metal kit. I didn't even know K's made these, and I was delighted to have one of those. I like to get samples of back of the old stuff that we used to have. So it doesn't look too bad alongside the Parkside kit, in my opinion, but weighs a ton, of course, so you have to be careful shunting it. But that's quite close to being authentic with the problems they had with the prototype, I believe. So I mentioned earlier on that I started my fleet with some surplus wagons and 1 or 2 private owners that I repainted into PLA livery using transfers. And then more recently I acquired some unpainted 5-plank bodies for $3 each, I think it was, from Hatton's before they closed, and some complete depot wagons, which actually even now would cost not much more than $19 each, complete with wheels and couplings, which is not a bad value for money. So I did half a dozen to add to the fleet into PLA using red bauxite or rust color, depending on what you prefer, and weathering them a little bit. Of course, now thanks are due to Andrew Hardy, Rapido UK's general manager, for encouraging Rapido to introduce some PLA liveries on their superb, super detailed wagon range. The former Great Western Mink is out now, and the Caledonian Railway ventilated van is due any moment as I make this recording in September 15th, 2024. 5-plank Great Western Railway Open is due in late as well, 2024. And then a recent announcement has been the Open Sea ex-Great Western pipe wagon. Pipe wagons were quite common on the docks apparently, so this is a great addition to their line. But it has to have some brake vans. It just doesn't look right without some brake vans. So I decided very quickly in collecting these I wanted to make a brake van, and I was aware that there were several different types, presumed that they would have been bought from other railways. And I found a picture which I now can't find, which indicated that a Midland Railway type single veranda brake van was used. This is a converted Slater's Midland Railway kit for PLA. Now, I have, since this research was done, found a picture of a six-wheeled version of this. Now, I'm not sure if the six-wheel version was converted to four wheels or whether it was a separate vehicle or not. Information on PLA is very difficult to find. But I think this one looks the part. So I started with this one. This was my first PLA brake van. And as I mentioned, the second one came about from a picture, and again, I don't know where I found this picture now, so apologies to the owner of the picture, but it's a very old picture, clearly showing a six-wheeled single veranda version, with LPL on the side, although the caption indicated it was most definitely in use on the Port of London Authority Railway. I did a lot of research. I thought, what's LPL stand for? And the only thing I could come up with was it was at the Leamington Power Limited private line at some point, maybe after being on PLA. I don't know if it was after or before. And at this time, when I was doing this research, I suddenly found that Rapido were producing a South Eastern Chatham Railway version with a single veranda, but only producing it exclusively for rails of Sheffield. It's not in their normal range. So I decided that I would look into that. But this is the finished version based on the SECR single veranda brake van by Rapido. I should think they were pretty horrified at Rapido with what I did to their model to get here. I'm not sure I'd want to repeat it, and I'm not sure I want to recommend you do this, but as I think it was about £55 this model, but I was very happy with the end result, but I had my foot in my mouth a few times doing it. And this is what I did. So this is how it comes, and it looks on the face of it when you're researching this, it's going to be easy to convert, and it really wasn't, because the handrail arrangement is different on the example in the photograph, and so I had to replace and add handrails. I then realized that the end bulkheads on the veranda were not there. They were presumably on the inside or not there at all of the veranda, so I actually removed those. And then I realized the lamp irons weren't any good, so we had to take those out and replace them. I actually used ordinary small Bambi staples to use for that. I'm sure there are more sophisticated remedies, but that's what I did. And then, just to cap it all, I realized the stove was in completely the wrong place. And I thought, oh, what do I do now? This lovely detail inside this model, and I'm going to ruin it by moving the stove in the chimney. And I actually did do that. I removed the stove and the chimney and altered the roof and everything, because it was in a different place on the PLA model. So that was that one. Then I saw a picture of a former LNER Toad B, and that was in use on the PLA. It's the only picture I've seen, a tiny little extract that indicates it was there. And I actually got hold of a Hornby one, which are quite difficult to get hold of. I have to admit, though, I did not cut the footboards down. I kept the footboards full length, but to be accurate, the footboard should be cut down for the example that's in the picture. Other than that, I tried to get as close as I possibly could to it. Here's the link to the photograph, the full photograph, which has I think it has a Janus in front of it, that brake van. And this is a quick screenshot of a very short PLA video on YouTube, which shows some of the good stock and this particular brake van. Now, I don't know if perhaps I mistook that for a single veranda Midland Railway type, but I now believe it is not. It's actually a Great Eastern Railway Sinclair brake van of some age. So perhaps that was where I made the mistake. I don't know if I have made a mistake. But, and then very recently I discovered they had one of these, at least, which was an XLMS brake van, and you can see here too they've cut back the footboards. I wonder why they did that, but they cut the footboards back. I have not made a model of that yet, but I do have a detailed British Railways version of it, which I could run. And I know that recently, I think Sam Strains did an excellent review of the Hornby model of this type, which seems to be really nice, so I might do one day. So the models that got away, well, these are the ones I found so far. I haven't managed to get. Andrew Hardy had a range of, I think it was Andrew who had a range of Hardy locomotives prior to joining Rapido, and one of them was this lovely PLA tank. I think it's a Hawthorne Leslie, and it fits a Rivarossi chassis, 060 chassis. I haven't been able to get the body or the chassis for this, but I, funnily enough, did manage to get the transfers for some. So that's a possibility going forward, unless of course Rapido decide to produce one of these, which will be wonderful. Then there is the Millwall Extension Railway locomotive on the right, available from shapeways.com, 3D printed. Looks lovely, but it's a little early in period for me, so I haven't gone over to that yet. I haven't got that yet. And then very recently, Rapido UK announced a acute fireless locomotive, very similar to the one operated adjoining the Port of London Authority at Silvertown, but the one at Silvertown had a different cab, more of a metal cab, I think, and the 3D Factory UK offer a resin body for Hornby W4s, and it looks a little closer to the one at Silvertown. I might be tempted, particularly as I have a spare Hornby W4 that would take the conversion. So that's just about it for the Port of London Authority presentation. I've got a little bit more in slides coming to you, but this is the substance of it. I do want at this point to dedicate this presentation to the late Colin Withey. I didn't meet him. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Hopefully I am. But we did exchange emails a few times, and he was instrumental in getting me interested in Port of London Authority. So the discussion is actually on RM Web, and I put the link at the bottom of this slide for you. A little bit of reference material in the last couple of slides. Useful materials. You can see the old time workshop decals for wagons here. The black numbers and letters, I presume, are for insulated or refrigerated vans. Refrigerated vans probably. The right hand side, the etched name and number plates for the Janus are still available, I believe, from light railway stores. The Railway Mania transfers for Andrew's locomotive, I don't think are available now. I'm not sure, but they were available from railwaymania.net. Champ decals, I did use some of those. Some of those that I bought, American ones, they are very good, but they are now 25 plus years old. those that are being sold out on eBay, and you may find, as I did, that you get a consignment and they just completely break apart. So I would recommend you go to K4 Supply Company on eBay and select your sizes on there, what you want to do. I must admit, I don't remember whether I ordered 1/8 of an inch or 3/32 of an inch for numbers. I probably ordered both, and I don't remember which ones I'm using. So it's a much more economical way of dealing with lettering and numbering than using, I'm afraid, the original ones. Last look at Colin Wythie's notes on wagon numbering. And there were 2 sets of wagon numbers. Most of the things that are coming out at the moment are using the final number series, which had letter prefixes. You can see at the bottom there, A for covered vans, B for brake vans, C for open wagons, D for departmental. I don't worry about it. I have a complete mixture of numbering systems, but you may want to be more authentic in what you're doing. Thank you for watching the presentation. Take care now. Bye-bye.